he runs.
Out of the way, musclehead.
It's my last match.
There,
Sting exposed 7 soft wrestlers, but one ugly night proved why he had to be the adult in the room. For years, fans watched Sting walk into chaos and walk back out clean. He never had to scream the loudest. He never had to throw the first punch backstage. He earned his name the hard way by being the one man in the room who never hurt anyone on purpose. Wrestling locker rooms in the 80s and 90s were rough places. Big egos clashed every single day. Politics decided who got pushed to the top and who got buried at the bottom. Some guys were careless with their opponents. Some guys were dangerous on purpose. And some guys just looked tough on camera but folded the moment real pressure showed up. And as this story heats up, use the hype feature and give hype to this video because Sting is about to expose a lot more. Sting was not one of those guys. He showed up, did his job, and made sure the man across the ring from him got home safe at the end of the night. That kind of trust does not happen by accident. It gets built over years, one match at a time. That reputation became the most important thing in the world on one terrible night in March of 2011. A wrestler walked to the ring that night in no shape to perform. What happened next was not in the script, it was real. Sting saw it happen, and he made a choice in seconds that changed the whole night. We are going to get to that night. It is the clearest example of everything we are about to talk about. But to understand why it mattered so much, we need to go back further. We need to look at the tool Sting used to handle it and where that tool came from. Because Sting did not start his career with a finishing move built for sudden danger. He started with something slower, something that worked great in a calmer world but could not survive the world wrestling was about to become. This is the story of how Sting changed his biggest weapon to survive a changing business and how he used that weapon again and again to expose people who were not as tough, as honest, or as professional as they wanted everyone to believe. Some of these people were copying him, some were laughing at him, some were protected by powerful friends, and one of them was simply not in a safe condition to be in a wrestling ring at all. Sting handled every single one of them differently, but the result was always the same. The truth came out fast, and Sting walked away with his name intact. By the end of this video, you will understand why old-school wrestling fans still talk about Sting with so much respect. It is not just because he wore face paint or because he played a cool character. It is because, time after time, when the business around him got messy, dangerous, or fake, Sting was the one person who stayed steady. Think about how many wrestlers came and went over those years. Some burned out fast. Some got caught up in backstage drama. Some never figured out how to adjust when the business changed around them. Sting kept adjusting year after year while staying true to one simple idea. Protect the people in the ring with you, even when nobody else around you seems to care about doing the same. That idea is the thread running through every story in this video. Let us start with the tool that made it all possible, a single move that Sting reshaped to fit a wrestling world that was getting faster, rougher, and a lot less honest. Early in his career, Sting was known as Surfer Sting. He was bright, full of energy, and loved by the crowd. His finishing move back then was called the Scorpion Deathlock. It was a submission hold. You lock your legs around your opponent's leg, twist, and bend them backward until they give up or pass out. It looks a lot like another famous move called the Sharpshooter, the one made famous by Bret Hart. The Scorpion Deathlock worked great for the kind of stories wrestling told in those days. A hero gets beaten down for most of the match. The villain looks like he is going to win. Then, at the last moment, the hero fights back, locks in the hold, and the crowd goes wild as the villain taps out or passes out. It was slow. It built up tension step by step. Fans loved watching Sting lock this move on rivals like Ric Flair and the group of wrestlers known as the Four Horsemen. But wrestling started to change in the middle of the 1990s. A group called the New World Order, or the NW, showed up on television and turned everything upside down. Matches were no longer just two guys in a ring with a referee. Now, groups of wrestlers would run in during matches, and numbers mattered. If you were alone in the ring with 3 or 4 guys waiting outside, you were in trouble. This created a big problem for a move like the Scorpion Deathlock. Locking in a slow submission hold takes time. While you are doing it, you are completely open. Anyone could run in from behind and attack you before the hold was even finished. In the old days, that almost never happened. In the new NWO world, it could happen any night. Sting needed a new weapon. He needed something that worked in one motion. Something he could hit fast, in almost any position, without giving anyone time to interfere. That is when he brought in the Scorpion Death Drop. The Scorpion Death Drop is a different kind of move entirely. Instead of a slow hold, it is a sudden strike. Sting would hook his arm under the opponent's chin and around their head, pulling them in close. Then he would drop straight backward, driving the opponent's head and shoulders into the mat. It happens in less than 2 seconds. There is no setup time. There is no waiting around. One moment you are standing in front of Sting, and the next moment you are flat on your back looking up at the lights. This fit perfectly with the new version of Sting that showed up around the same time. After feeling betrayed by people close to him, Sting changed his look completely. He stopped wearing the bright colors of his surfer days. He painted his face white and black, wore a long coat, and barely spoke. Fans called this version the Crow Sting, named after a dark movie character. The Crow Sting did not wrestle long matches anymore. He would appear out of nowhere, deliver the Scorpion Death Drop, and disappear again before the NW could do anything about it. This new finisher also solved another problem behind the scenes. Around this same time, Bret Hart was leaving the other big wrestling company to join WCW, and his finishing move, the sharpshooter, looked almost exactly like Sting's old Scorpion Deathlock. Having two of the biggest stars in the company use nearly the same finishing hold would have been confusing for fans. By switching to the Scorpion Death Drop, Sting gave himself something completely different, and nobody could say he was copying Bret Hart anymore. All of this matters because of who Sting was as a person backstage. Wrestling in this era had a lot of problems. Some wrestlers were careless with their opponents during matches that were supposed to be safe. Some had real backstage power because of friendships or politics, and used that power to avoid consequences. Sting was different. People who worked with him for years said the same thing over and over. He never had backstage heat with anyone. He protected the people he worked with, did the job right, and went home. That is a version of Sting walking into every single story we are about to cover. A man with a brand new, sudden, impossible to argue with finishing move, and a reputation for using it the right way, even when the people around him were not playing by the same rules. The first time the world saw this new weapon in action, it was used to settle one of the strangest and most personal stories of Sting's entire career. In September of 1996, something strange started happening on WCW television. The NW brought in a wrestler named Jeff Farmer and dressed him up to look exactly like Sting. Same face paint, same outfit. The company even made special molds of Sting's face to help Farmer's makeup look more real, although in the end they barely needed it once the paint went on. This was not just a costume joke. It was a plan to mess with people's minds. This fake Sting started appearing and acting like the real Sting, but doing things the real Sting would never do. He sided with the NW. He attacked his own friends. To the wrestlers backstage and to fans watching at home, it looked like Sting himself had turned on everyone he used to stand with. Think about how that would feel. Imagine working with someone for years, trusting them, and then suddenly seeing them do things that go against everything you thought you knew about them. That is exactly what happened to the real Sting. His own friends in the locker room started to doubt him, and Sting felt betrayed, not by one person, but by the whole situation. So he did something nobody expected. He walked away. For weeks, Sting disappeared from WCW television completely. While the fake Sting kept running around with the NW, the real Sting sat high above the ring, up near the rafters, just watching. He did not say a word. He did not explain himself. He just watched everything happening below him week after week, while a copy of himself wore his colors and his face paint in front of millions of people. This went on long enough that fans started to wonder if the real Sting was ever coming back, and if he did, what he would even look like. When he finally returned, nobody was ready for it. Gone were the bright colors and the cheerful surfer attitude. In their place was a quiet, painted, almost silent figure. This was the Crow Sting, and his first order of business was simple. He needed to deal with the man who had been wearing his face. On October 21, 1996, that moment finally arrived. The real Sting came down from the rafters and walked toward the fake Sting, Jeff Farmer. There was no big wrestling match. There was no long exchange of moves. The real Sting did not need any of that. He grabbed Farmer, hooked his head, and dropped him straight to the mat with the very first Scorpion Death Drop anyone had ever seen on television. It was over in seconds. One man had spent weeks wearing another man's identity, causing chaos and confusion in his name. The other man needed less than 2 seconds to end it completely. The message could not have been clearer. A copy is just a copy. It does not matter how good the paint job is, or how close the outfit looks. When the real thing shows up, the fake one does not stand a chance. Jeff Farmer never got a long career out of playing fake Sting. He was a tool used by the NWO to create chaos, and once that chaos was cleaned up, his job was done. For Sting, this moment meant much more than just winning a fight. It was the official beginning of a brand new chapter. The Crow Sting was real now, and everyone watching understood that something had changed for good. The quiet, painted version of Sting was not going to talk his way through problems anymore. He was going to solve them fast and then disappear again. This was only the beginning. Once that first Scorpion death drop landed on television, it did not take long before the NWO tried something even bolder, this time with a much bigger group of fake Stings, and a much louder, much more arrogant man standing in front of them. A year later, in October of 1997, the NWO tried the fake Sting trick again, but this time they made it even bigger. Instead of one carefully made-up imposter, they brought out a whole group of jobbers wearing cheap masks and wigs that were supposed to look like Sting. These were not high-quality costumes. They were the kind of thing you might grab from a Halloween store at the last minute. The idea was simple. Mock Sting by flooding the ring with bad copies of him. On October 13, 1997, on Monday Nitro, one of the NWO's loudest and most confident members took the job of beating up these fake Stings. His name was Buff Bagwell. Buff loved attention. He loved showing off his muscles. He loved striking poses for the camera after he won a fight, even an easy one against a guy in a wig. That night, Buff did exactly that. He went after these decoy Stings one by one, knocking them down, and then standing over them, flexing and posing for the crowd like he had just done something amazing. The crowd booed, but Buff did not care. To him, this was just another easy win, another chance to look good in front of the cameras. Then he turned to the next fake Sting in line. He hit this one just like the others. But something was different. This one did not fall down the way the rest had. This one just stood there. Buff probably thought it was a fluke. So he squared up again, ready to keep the show going. That is when the mask and wig came off. It was not another jobber. It was the real Sting standing right in front of Buff Bagwell face to face, and Buff had absolutely no plan for that. Before he could even adjust his stance, Sting grabbed him, hooked his head, and dropped him hard with the Scorpion death drop. The whole arena exploded. 1 second, Buff Bagwell was the loudest, most confident man in the building. The next second, he was flat on his back, and the loudest sound in the building was the crowd cheering for the man who had just shut him up. What makes this moment so good is what it says about Buff Bagwell as a character. He was great at beating up people who could not fight back. He was great at posing once the fight was already over. But the moment a real threat stood in front of him, someone who was not there to lose on purpose, Buff had nothing. No reaction, no defense, just a long fall to the mat and a crowd that loved every second of it. This became one of the most replayed moments of that whole era of wrestling. It told a complete story in just a few seconds. Loud and confident on one side, calm and dangerous on the other. When those two things finally met face to face, there was only one outcome. Buff Bagwell would go on to have other moments in wrestling, but this night stuck with fans for a simple reason. It captured the difference between looking tough and being tough. Buff looked the part every single night. Sting just was the part, and Buff found that out the hard way in front of millions of people. The NWO's attempts to embarrass Sting with versions of himself were starting to look like a pattern that kept backfiring. But not every problem Sting faced during this era came from jobbers in cheap costumes. Some of it came from men who were already at the very top of the company, protected by power that had nothing to do with talent. Scott Hall was one of the most talented performers of his generation. There is no debating that. His timing in the ring was excellent. His presence was huge. And when the NWO first showed up, Scott Hall was a big part of why it felt so dangerous and exciting. But talent in the ring is only one part of being a true professional. And behind the scenes, Scott Hall's story was a lot more complicated. Scott Hall was part of the inner circle of the NWO, a group that had real power inside WCW, not just on screen, but in real life. Decisions about who got pushed and who did not often ran through that group. Scott Hall also had personal struggles that affected his life both inside and outside the ring, and at times those struggles made him difficult to rely on. On top of that, he was not always willing to help newer or younger talent look good, which is something that matters a lot in a business built on trust between performers. Put all of that together, and you get a picture of someone who was protected. Not because management did not see the problems, but because Scott Hall was too valuable to the NWO storyline to push back on too hard. That kind of protection is its own form of power. Sting did not have that kind of protection, and he did not need it. What he had was the Scorpion Death Drop, and in his matches against Scott Hall, that move did something interesting. It cut straight through all of that political noise. Picture the scene. Scott Hall, a man backed by one of the most powerful groups in the company, goes for one of his own big signature moves. Maybe he tries to lift Sting up for a powerbomb. Maybe he goes for his finisher. For a second, it looks like Hall is in total control, the same way the NW always seemed to be in total control of WCW. Then Sting shifts his weight. In one motion, he slips out of Hall's grip, hooks his head, and drives him down with the Scorpion Death Drop. It happens so fast that there is no time for Hall's reputation, his friends, or his backstage status to matter at all. The move just happens clean and sudden, and Hall is on the mat looking up at the lights, just like everyone else in this story. This is what made the Scorpion Death Drop so valuable to Sting during this whole era. It did not care who you were backstage. It did not care who your friends were or how much power your group had. Once Sting locked it in, the outcome was the same every time. For fans watching at home, these moments were satisfying in a way that is hard to explain unless you understand how political wrestling could be behind the scenes. Scott Hall represented a system that often felt untouchable. Sting, using nothing but a sudden, simple, honest move, made that system look very touchable indeed. Scott Hall's talent was real, and nobody can take that away from him. But talent without reliability creates problems, and those problems often get protected instead of fixed. Every time Sting hit that Scorpion Death Drop on someone backed by that kind of protection, it sent a small message anyway. No matter how protected you are, the basics still apply. Show up, be ready, because eventually someone is going to be faster than you. Politics inside the company were one kind of problem. But not every issue Sting faced was about backstage power. Some of it was much more personal and much harder to fix because it came from real feelings between two people who simply did not get along. Most people who worked with Sting over the years say the same thing. He was easy to get along with. He did not hold grudges. He did not create drama. But there was one feud late in WCW's history that seems to have been different, and that feud was with a wrestler named Vampiro. By the year 2000, WCW was in a rough spot. The company that had once been on top of the wrestling world was losing fans fast, and a lot of the booking decisions during this time were strange, rushed, and did not make much sense. It was during this messy stretch that Sting found himself in a long program against Vampiro. Vampiro's whole look was built around white face paint and a dark gothic style, and to a lot of fans, this looked similar to Sting's own Crow look. According to people close to the situation, Sting was not happy about this. He reportedly saw Vampiro's painted face as a cheap copy of something Sting had already made famous. Vampiro pushed back on that idea in interviews later on. He said he had been using that kind of face paint for years before coming to WCW, working in Mexico under a different style of wrestling entirely. So, from Vampiro's side, this was not copying anyone. It was just his own look, one he had used long before he ever crossed paths with Sting. Whatever the truth was, the real-life tension between these two men was rare for Sting. Almost everyone else in this story got hit with the Scorpion Death Drop, and that was that, a clean resolution. With Vampiro, the matches were not clean or simple. They were strange, chaotic, and at times genuinely dangerous. One of the low points was a graveyard-style segment where Vampiro smashed a tombstone over Sting's head. Another was a match remembered as the Human Torch match, held at a pay-per-view called Great American Bash in 2000. If those names sound more like something from a horror movie than a wrestling card, that is because the entire program leaned heavily into strange gimmicks instead of solid wrestling. None of this helped Vampiro become the star WCW seemed to want him to be. Despite getting a long program with someone as respected as Sting, Vampiro never really broke through as a true main event level performer. Reports from this time describe him as someone dealing with serious personal struggles, including addiction, along with an attitude that made it hard for him to work well with others. These problems had already caused friction for him at other wrestling companies before he ever arrived in WCW. After WCW, Vampiro went to wrestle in Mexico for a promotion called CML, working alongside some of the best technical wrestlers in the world, performers like Blue Panther and Negro Casas. Even with talented partners like that helping carry the matches, Vampiro still struggled to put together the kind of performances that main event level wrestlers are expected to deliver. For a lot of longtime fans, that later struggle confirmed something they had already suspected. The problem was never really about face paint. It was about whether someone had the professional foundation needed to work at the top of the card. Sting's feud with Vampiro stands out in this story because it is the one example where the Scorpion Death Drop did not provide a clean, satisfying ending. There was no single moment where Sting hit the move and the story wrapped up neatly. Instead, the whole program just kind of faded away, the same way a lot of WCCW storylines did during this period, without a real resolution and without making anyone involved look better for it. In a strange way, that makes this story just as important as the others. It shows that even someone as professional as Sting could not always force a messy situation into a clean shape. Sometimes the business itself was too broken for that. But even here, Sting's reputation held up. The mess belonged to the booking and to a performer who never found his footing at the top. It did not belong to Sting. Around the same time, WCW was also busy building up another wrestler as its next big star. A wrestler whose push had a lot of people backstage shaking their heads. By late 2000, WCW was being run in a very different way than it had been in the past. A writer named Vince Russo had a lot of control over the storylines, and Russo had a clear favorite that he wanted to push to the top of the company. That wrestler was Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett was not a bad wrestler. He had been around for years and knew how to put on a solid match. The problem was how he was being pushed compared to what veterans in the locker room felt he had actually earned. He was Russo's pick, plain and simple, and in wrestling, being someone's pick can take you a lot further than your actual drawing power would on its own. To build Jarrett up, WCW decided to run him through a feud with Sting, but this was not going to be a normal feud with two guys slowly building toward a big match. Instead, it became one of the most overbooked, chaotic programs of that whole era, packed full of twists that seemed designed to make Sting look weaker rather than to make Jarrett look stronger on his own merits. One moment from this feud says a lot about how it was structured. At one point, Sting caught Jarrett backstage and attacked him with no warning at all. By the time the segment was over, Jarrett was left lying on the floor, completely knocked out, while Sting walked away. For a moment, it looked like Sting had the clear upper hand, the way you would expect from someone with his reputation. But that moment did not lead anywhere clean. Instead, the story kept twisting toward a final showdown at a pay-per-view called Halloween Havoc in October of 2000. And this is where things got truly bizarre. For this match, Jarrett did not just bring backup. He brought an army of fake Stings, dressed in outfits from different points in Sting's career. There were Surfer Stings, there were Crow Stings. All kinds of versions of Sting's look, all mixed together, all there to confuse and overwhelm the real Sting during the match. Think about how strange that is for a second. By this point in the story, fans had already seen the NW try the fake Sting trick more than once, and both times it had ended badly for whoever was wearing the costume. Yet here was WCW running the exact same idea again on an even bigger scale as part of a push for their chosen new star. During the match, Jarrett managed to hit a running shoulder tackle called the Stinger Splash, a move that is honestly strange for him to use against Sting, since it had become associated with Sting himself earlier in his career. Jarrett also suplexed Sting through a table during the chaos. By the end of the match, with all the interference and imposters mixed in, Jarrett walked away with a win. But it was not a clean win, and everyone watching could tell. It was a win built on numbers, distractions, and outside help, rather than Jarrett simply being the better man that night. For a lot of fans and people backstage, this match became a symbol of everything going wrong with WCW. Instead of building new stars by having them earn wins the right way, the company was tearing down its most respected veterans to prop up whoever the head writer happened to favor. Sting did not get his clean answer to Jeff Jarrett the way he had with the fake Stings before. This story did not end with a single decisive Scorpion Death Drop that settled everything. Instead, it ended the way a lot of late-era WCW stories ended, messy, unsatisfying, and more about politics than wrestling. Jarrett got his win on paper, but anyone who watched that match could see exactly what kind of win it really was. Stories like this one were part of a bigger pattern at WCW during this time, a pattern of legends being weakened to push new favorites, who often could not carry that weight on their own. It was a frustrating period for fans, and it set the stage for some of the most difficult years of Sting's career. Years that would eventually lead him to a completely different wrestling company and to the single most serious moment in this entire story. Now we come back to the night we opened this video with, March 13th, 2011, TNA's Victory Road pay-per-view. Sting was the TNA World Heavyweight Champion, and he was scheduled to defend that title in the main event against Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy was, and still is, one of the most popular wrestlers of his generation. Fans loved his daredevil style, his colorful look, and the way he connected with crowds. A match between Sting and Jeff Hardy for the world title was a huge deal. Fans were excited, cameras were ready, everything was set up for a big main event. But behind the curtain, something was very wrong. About 20 minutes before the match was set to start, a wrestler and backstage agent named D'Lo Brown noticed that Jeff Hardy was not in any condition to perform. Hardy was severely impaired. This was not a case of nerves or a small injury that could be worked around. This was a serious problem, the kind that meant Hardy was not safe to be in a wrestling ring at all that night, let alone in a long physical main event match. D'Lo Brown raised the alarm right away. But there was another problem. TNA's president at the time, Dixie Carter, was not in the immediate area backstage. With time running out and a packed arena waiting for the main event, someone had to make a decision fast. That person turned out to be Eric Bischoff, a longtime executive who had been through almost every kind of wrestling crisis you can imagine. Bischoff walked out to the ring himself and grabbed a microphone, buying time with an impromptu promo, while behind the scenes, word was getting to both wrestlers that the match had to end and end fast. This is where Sting's whole career, everything we have talked about up to this point, comes into focus all at once. Sting walked into that ring knowing the situation. He knew Jeff Hardy could not protect himself the way a wrestler needs to during a match, and that if this went on for even a few more minutes, something could go seriously wrong. Not a storyline kind of wrong, a real physical, someone gets seriously hurt kind of wrong. So Sting took control of the entire situation right there in front of a live crowd and television cameras. As Hardy moved around the ring, clearly not himself, Sting backed him into a corner. He threw a series of punches, the kind of strikes that in this context were really about getting Hardy into position safely rather than building toward a long exchange. Then Sting pulled Hardy into the same move we have been talking about this whole video, the Scorpion Death Drop. Hardy went down, but Sting was not done yet, because seriously impaired wrestlers can sometimes react on instinct, even when they are not aware of what is happening. There was a real chance Hardy's body might try to kick out of the pin out of pure muscle memory, the same way he had done in hundreds of matches before. If that happened, the referee might keep counting, the match would drag on, and the dangerous situation would just continue. So Sting did not just cover Hardy for a normal pin, he put his full body weight down on top of him and held him there, making absolutely sure the referee's hand hit the mat 3 times with no chance of a kick out. The whole match, from bell to finish, lasted 88 seconds. The crowd did not understand what they had just watched. From their point of view, they had paid for a big main event between 2 legends, and it was over before it really started. They were angry. They booed loudly, the kind of boos that fill an entire arena. And then Sting did something that a lot of fans still talk about today. He turned to the crowd and he said, "I agree," 2 words. That is all it took. He was not arguing with the fans. He was not making excuses. He understood exactly why they were upset, and he was telling them, honestly, that he understood. But he also was not going to explain what had really happened, not in that moment, in front of everyone. He simply absorbed the crowd's anger, protected Jeff Hardy from a situation that could have gotten much worse, and walked away having done his job the only way it could safely be done that night. This moment is the heart of everything this video has been building toward. Every other story we have covered involved Sting using the Scorpion Death Drop to settle a score, expose a fake, or cut through some kind of backstage nonsense. This one was different. This one was not about beating anyone. It was about protecting someone, even while taking on the anger of an entire arena by himself. Afterward, reports said that TNA sent Jeff Hardy home so he could get the help he needed. For Sting, there was no celebration, no moment of triumph. Just a job done quietly under enormous pressure, with almost nobody outside the building understanding what had really happened until later. After the Jeff Hardy match, Sting's run in TNA continued, and one of his most memorable feuds during this time was with a wrestler named Bobby Roode. Bobby Roode was playing a heel champion, the kind of character fans love to dislike. His whole gimmick was built around being lucky. Roode's matches often ended not because he was clearly the better wrestler that night, but because something fell his way at just the right moment. A distraction, a dirty trick, a lucky bounce. Fans were supposed to feel like Rude did not really deserve his championship, and that someone like Sting, a true legend, was the right man to finally take it away from him. This led to a steel cage match at Victory Road in 2012, with Rude's championship on the line. Steel cage matches in wrestling are usually brutal, no rules affairs, and this one was no different. Both men were taking big risks throughout the match, and by the end, it was clear that something dramatic was going to decide who walked out as champion. Sting decided to go for broke. He set up a steel chair in the ring, planning to use it to help deliver one final Scorpion death drop and finish Rude off for good. Sting clearly believed this would be the moment it happened one more time, ending Rude's lucky reign for good. But this time, something went wrong, and for once, it was not because of the other guy. As Sting dropped backward to deliver the move, he misjudged exactly where the chair was. Instead of landing in a controlled position the way he had so many times before, the back of his own head slammed into the steel edge of that chair. Sting knocked himself out. Rude was also affected by the impact of the move, and for a moment, both men were down, but only one of them needed to win. Rude, even though he was hurting, managed to drape one arm weakly across Sting's chest. The referee counted to 3. Rude kept his championship. Think about how perfectly this fits Rude's entire character. His whole gimmick was about surviving through luck rather than skill, about somehow walking away with the win even when things did not go his way during the match. And in this case, the storyline could not have written a better ending if they had tried. Sting, the legend, the man with the unstoppable finishing move, accidentally took himself out of the match with his own weapon. Rude did not have to do anything except fall in the right direction at the right time. Fans reacted to this finish with a lot of frustration. For a character as respected as Sting, getting knocked out by his own move, by his own mistake, felt like a strange way to lose. It made him look human in a way that some fans simply did not enjoy watching. Nobody wants to see their hero beaten by his own hand instead of by the other guy actually earning it. But step back for a second and look at the bigger picture. In every other match we have covered, when Sting's plan worked perfectly, it was because of years of skill, timing, and professionalism. This one time it did not work, and the difference was not subtle at all. One small miscalculation, one shift in where a chair happened to be sitting, and instead of ending someone else's night, Sting ended his own. For Bobby Roode, this was the luckiest win of his career, built entirely on someone else's mistake. For Sting, it was a rare moment of looking less than perfect. But even here, there was no controversy about effort or heart. Sting had been trying to finish the match the hard way, going all in on one final move, and it just did not go his way that night. By the time Sting's run in TNA ended, he had already gone through more changes than most wrestlers ever do. Surfer Sting, Crow Sting, different looks, different companies, different chapters of his career, but always the same person underneath, doing his job the right way no matter what was happening around him. Sting eventually signed with WWE, the biggest wrestling company in the world. Fans had waited for years to see him on that stage, but this chapter of his career did not go the way anyone hoped. During a match against Seth Rollins at a show called Night of Champions in 2015, Sting suffered a serious neck injury. For a man already well into his 50s, an injury like that is the kind of thing that can end a career for good. Sting's time as an active wrestler seemed to be over, but Sting's story was not finished yet. In 2020, Sting signed with All Elite Wrestling, a newer promotion that a lot of fans were excited about. Nobody really knew what to expect. Would he just show up for a few appearances, wave to the crowd, and call it a career? That would have been completely understandable for a man his age with his history of injuries. Instead, Sting did something nobody saw coming. He started wrestling real physical matches again, teaming up with a younger wrestler named Darby Allin, and together they became one of the most exciting tag teams on the show. Sting was diving off balconies and taking real bumps at an age when most wrestlers had long since retired. What made this run so special was not just that Sting could still go physically, it was how he used that ability. Instead of standing in the corner while younger wrestlers did all the work, Sting got in there with them, helping elevate Darby Allin and other younger talent by working alongside them. One moment from this AEW run brings the whole story full circle. At Double or Nothing in 2021, Sting and Darby Allin teamed up against Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page. During the match, Scorpio Sky went for a sudden move called a cutter, trying to catch Sting off guard. Sting held onto the top rope to stop the momentum of the move. Then, in one smooth motion, just like he had done so many times before, against fake Stings, against politically protected stars, against impaired opponents on the worst possible night, Sting hooked Scorpio Sky's head and dropped him with one more Scorpion death drop. Clean, simple, effective. The same move decades later, still working exactly the way it was designed to. Think back to everything this move had been used for. Exposing a fake version of Sting, shutting down an arrogant show-off who only looked tough, cutting through the protection around a politically powerful star, dealing with a feud that got too messy to ever really resolve, surviving the push of a company favorite who was not ready for that spot, handling the single scariest moment of Sting's career, the night he had to protect another human being instead of beating him, and even surviving Sting's own rare mistake, the one time the move did not go his way at all. Through every one of those moments, one thing never changed. Sting never needed to bully anyone backstage to get his point across. He never needed politics, numbers, or power that had nothing to do with wrestling. He let the work speak for itself across 4 different decades and 4 different companies. That is why, even now, fans still bring these stories up. Not because Sting was the flashiest wrestler or the one with the most championships, but because in a business full of fake toughness, backstage politics, and people who could not be trusted to do the right thing when it mattered most, Sting was the one person who always could be. He stayed professional when the business around him often was not, and that is the real legacy he leaves behind.